to Educator Insights, everyone. Today, we will be discussing the intersection of technology and education, including the benefits and challenges of virtual and hybrid learning, the use of technology tools in the classroom, and best practices for integrating technology into teaching. I'm Husena Jadliwala from MagicBox, and I'm thrilled to have Michele Lee, a K-12 educator and a high school CTE teacher at North Carolina Virtual Academy, as our guest today. Michele, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yes, thank you. So I think a good place to get started really is to understand what motivated you to become a high school CTE teacher and how you see CTE evolving in the age of technology.
Sure. I was working in the beginning of my career. I was actually working in private corporate sales and marketing in the semiconductor industry. So my background is in business, sales and marketing, and technology. And so at the point in my career, I was traveling quite a bit in my career. And when I got married and settled down, started having children, I decided to move into teaching to share a lot of my passion for business, my passion for technology. Technology has always been a big part of my life, even from when I was a child. And it's something I'm very passionate about. So I'm in the right, it was the perfect segue for me to go into CTE, career and technical education.
That's amazing. And I'm really thrilled to hear that, it kind of came from somewhere else first, not directly from teaching, which is still really amazing. And I'm sure that took a degree of adapting. So,
yes,
yeah.
definitely.
So speaking of, adaptation, your experience teaching in both traditional brick and mortar schools and virtual public schools must have required a degree of adaptation as well. So can you tell us more about that? What the main differences are in terms of teaching style and student engagement?
Sure. I spent my first 12 years in brick and mortar schools in middle school, mostly teaching CTE courses. And a lot of what we focus on in CTE in middle schools, at least in the state of North Carolina where I teach, is exploring careers and exploration. Middle school here is all about exploration. So it's a very exciting time for students to be able to explore different possibilities, different career pathways. So that was really my focus in person when I was teaching in person in brick and mortar schools. And so really the great thing about that is with middle school, you have a lot of flexibility. You have it's very hands-on. And so I really enjoyed that aspect of it. Now I'm teaching in a virtual high school in North Carolina public schools. So it's a very big transition. Even for me, it's been a big transition, different skill set and very, very different, and using a lot more technology than ever before, for sure.
Yeah, I totally imagine.
And I think that's one of the reasons that motivated me to go to a virtual school was, I do love technology. And after 12 years of teaching in brick and mortar, I wanted to push myself out of my comfort zone and really challenge myself to take on new technologies, to learn new systems, new software, new everything. I'm very much a growth mindset type of an educator, and I like to learn new things. So this was a big leap in terms of taking on new systems, learning everything from the ground up. It's very different.
Yeah. And, it's great that you took that leap. I think not very many people might have the confidence to do that, but I'm so glad to hear that you did. And it's also interesting to hear, the difference in teaching style or strategy that were used in the two educational settings that you've had the chance to experience. So with the prevalence of virtual and hybrid learning, which at the moment, how do you see technology changing the way we approach education in the future?
Yeah, I think that's happening already. As you know, just being on social media and being aware of what's going on in the world, there's a lot of changes happening. A lot of technology, advanced technology, AI-based technology, generative technology that we're seeing now. And it's impacting every industry, not just business, not just corporate, not just tech companies, but also education. And so it is going to, have I believe it's going to have a big impact on education in the future. And I do think that we're going to see more and more different options out there in terms of virtual options, hybrid options. And I really do think in the long term, and it's going to take a while before brick and mortar schools, change slowly. But in some states, they're doing some pilot programs with, some different flexibility, some hybrid flexibility. We are seeing some changes, and it's going to take a while in that area to happen. But everybody wants more flexibility, more options, more choices, and that's what it's all about. And technology allows us to bring those options and that flexibility to students. And I think that's what it's all about, is meeting students where they're at, finding where they are. One of the main reasons I switched to virtual was to be able to impact students across the state, not just in my local neighborhood schools where I used to teach, but now I'm impacting students from coast to coast, from the coast of North Carolina all the way to the mountains and everywhere in between. So it's a way for me to expand my impact, and technology allows us to do that. I mean, it's all based on the technology. Without the technology, we couldn't have virtual schools. So for us, it's very important to have this cutting edge technology that we have. And I feel very fortunate to have it.
No, 100%. And technology is technology is the future as well. We were not in this state, a decade or two ago. I don't think it would have been possible to have an entirely virtual school this way.
Definitely not. And one thing I wanted to make very clear is, virtual schools have been around for a long time. This is not something, a lot of people think they just came up out of the pandemic, but that's not. Our school has been around for, almost 10 years.
Oh,
so it's been around for a long time. And there's just, for a lot of different reasons, it gives students with different lifestyle options that they never had before. We have a lot of military families in our state. We have a lot of, students, for whatever reason, they need this option, whether they're, training for the Olympics or whether they're moving around a lot, or it doesn't really matter what the reason is, but we give students that need it this option. And I think it's very important.
That is a very fresh perspective to bring into this. Not every student has the opportunity to experience education in the most traditional way, which is like going into school, into your classroom with your teacher. Some students have different skills, different abilities that they want to also explore.
Yes. And also I wanted to mention the rural population as well. I mean, we have a large rural population in our state. And so we're able to reach students in the most remote areas that live out on farms in the middle of nowhere. We can still teach them every single day, give them access to education. This is all about giving students access to education. That's what I'm all about. And that's why, and I believe that technology is the answer to unlocking this accessibility. And that's why I follow accessibility. As you well know, accessibility is one of my big hot topics and hot points that I'm very interested in. And how do we make education more accessible to students wherever they are? It doesn't matter where they're physically located. We have the technology now to bring it to every single student, not just in the state, but in the country and on the planet. That's really what I'm all about.
Yeah, and I definitely wanted to touch a little bit more in this podcast as well. But before we go into that, I actually wanted to ask you a question about integrating technology into your teaching practice. So I know right now you're in a virtual school. Earlier you were working in brick and mortar, but I'm sure you did integrate technology into your classroom teaching. So can you give us some examples of technology tools you used in the classroom and how they impacted student learning?
I'm going to talk about, since I spent the last 12 years in person in brick and mortar schools teaching at the middle school level, I had the tremendous opportunity to use some amazing tools, technology tools, and bring some really interesting activities, projects to the middle school classroom. Just a couple different examples. I mean, there's so many, but just to give you like a little bit of an example. The last 3 years I was teaching middle school, I was teaching mostly coding, and I was doing coding in Minecraft, which was a lot of fun. Any kind of tool that you can use with students where they have creativity, where they can build things, where they can explore, and especially in an immersive environment, like a 3D environment where you're going immersively into an environment, is very engaging. At least I found at the middle school level. I used CoSpaces EDU is another one that I used that I loved, and the kids loved it. Anything where you can, because especially in CoSpaces EDU, you can build anything. Basically, you can do the same thing in Minecraft. You can build anything. You can do storytelling. You can use it in any subject. Basically, I mean, you can build a lot. So I like to use the type of tools that are immersive, very immersive, where a student can go in, and especially in a 3D environment, and create something. It's all about creativity. At least that's where I like to focus my efforts on, because, when we look at Bloom's taxonomy, that's the very top of Bloom's taxonomy. So I tried to focus mostly on creative tools, and I still do. That's where I like to put my focus on. So those are just two examples.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously we use a lot of different things. I'm the kind of teacher, I'll try anything. To get students engaged, I will try just about anything. And I used a lot of fun tools over the years. I'm trying to think now, besides those two were big for
Yeah.
me, based on what I was teaching at the time, because I was teaching a lot of coding and computer science. And so those two have coding options built into them, which is very nice. A tool, they can be creative, but they can also do their coding. Also robotics. I was doing some virtual robotics with Vex VR was another one that's very immersive, a lot of fun. The kids loved it. With middle schoolers, the great thing about middle schoolers is they're very enthusiastic and they love all these tools. They'll dive in and they'll just go head first into it. So I was very blessed in that sense to teach middle school for so long, because the kids are just, and even elementary is like that too. Kids are at the high school level, it's more of a challenge.
Yeah, I can see that. I have spent some years working with students of different age ranges, middle school, high school. And I think just as we are as adults, in high school, students start to overthink a little bit more. They don't just dive into it as much. On the other hand, in elementary school, middle school, I can see that,
Yeah.
and I think I mentioned to you previously, but for our listeners, I also um, taught robotics to to students in schools in Singapore, and it was such an amazing experience to see how hands-on the students are and how creative they are coming up with solutions. So yeah, kudos to you for always choosing tools that will help students, unlock their creative part.
Mhm.
And yeah, I really appreciate that insight. And so, going back to accessibility, and the
Oh,
core of it is,
I don't mean to interrupt, but I just thought of something. I have to say
yes,
this.
yes, go
More
ahead.
tools, because you asked me about virtual. Now that now that I'm teaching in virtual, obviously, hands-on stuff is a little bit more challenging, but there are a lot of creative tools. I try to focus on creative tools. There are a lot of creative tools out there. There's Canva. My students love Canva, by the way. That's a big one that they love. They love to
Uh-huh.
create in Canva. There's Figma. And we try to use, I try to recommend free tools, because it's all about accessibility, like we talked about, and equity. And this is very important. So like, Unreal Engine, for example, that's another one. Twinmotion is another one. These are great building tools, creativity tools, where you can just go in and start creating stuff right out of, the gate. And there's no cost involved. So that's very important.
Yes, and that also speaks to accessibility because having no
Mhm.
cost means that more students can have access to these technology tools that they need to succeed. And how would you support students who perhaps do not have this type of access to resources like these at home?
Yeah, that's a huge challenge for a lot of schools and a lot of districts. I'm very blessed in a virtual school setting that I'm in now. We support 100% our students. So if there's any issues if they need, whatever they need, if they need a laptop, if they need a hotspot, we give that to them, and that's no cost to them. So I'm very happy to be in a place where we can support our students, but that is not the case all around our
Yes.
country. There are other districts that struggle with this quite a bit. And we still struggle with Wi-Fi, especially our students that are in remote areas. Wi-Fi is always an issue. Even if you're using a hotspot, if you don't have coverage in your area, it can be problematic and it can be challenging. So that's the Wi-Fi issue and the hotspot issue. I would love to see, my dream for the future is, if we have 5G technology, why can't we, have everybody, even students in the most remote parts, we need to make sure that they have access to high speed Wi-Fi. I think that's a key to unlocking a lot of our technology.
And I can totally see that. Ensuring that students have access to this technology is crucial, but it's obviously also a very challenging task.
Yes, it's
But
challenging.
yeah, but alongside this, what are some of the other bigger challenges you might have faced in implementing digital learning in your classroom? And if you can share any examples of how you might have overcome these challenges.
You're talking about in person or in virtual? Which
Um,
you,
I think both in a way.
okay.
In in person, of course, I can see that there might be bigger challenges there, but
Yeah.
also virtually.
I can touch base on both,
Yeah,
since I have experience in both, and I was in brick and mortar schools for 12 years.
yeah,
Some of the biggest, we talk about Wi-Fi. Well, some of the biggest challenges that we face in brick and mortar schools is high speed Wi-Fi, access to high speed Wi-Fi in every single classroom. Okay, every
yeah,
single classroom in the building. That is challenging of itself. And then also hardware access to, top of the line. We need high speed. We need hardware that's going to run all of these amazing. We have such great tools, but if we don't have the hardware to run them, it can be challenging. That's another big challenge in person, and also downloads. Downloads become very challenging
right,
because once you try to download a program, now luckily with cloud, now that we have cloud computing, a lot of these downloads, the problem with downloads is slowly going away. And I think in the next few years, the problem with downloads is going to go away for good because everybody's moving to the cloud. But in the olden days, and I'm talking like 10 years ago, that was a huge issue. But hardware is still an issue. Okay, some of these programs require some high end hardware to run,
mm-hmm.
and that's a challenge. I mean, it comes down to dollars, it comes down to funding for brick and mortar districts, and that's going to be a challenge. That's a challenge for them. For us virtually, I would say I'm trying to think. I mean, I think for me personally, it's been a benefit for virtual because we have a little bit more ability to have flexibility within the classroom as far as breakout rooms go and being able to meet with students. I have
Yeah,
more time to meet with students one on one now and have one on one conferences than ever before. That's because of the technology in virtual. It's not easy to have 30 kids in a room and you need to have like private conversations with 30 students. That's challenging.
right, right.
Um, so that's for me, virtual has given me the opportunity to get to know my students better, to go deeper with the relationships, to build those relationships in a way that allows the technology allows me to do that because the breakout rooms provide a quiet, private space where we can talk and we can, get to know our students better.
That's really amazing to hear. But do you sometimes find that you have trouble teaching in completely virtually? Are there any times when you felt like maybe this would have been easier in person? Just curious.
I mean, honestly, I think I'm going to be honest with you. For me personally, having a background in sales and marketing, it's not a problem for me because I love to
Okay.
talk. And here I am talking to you. In fact, I talk too much. That's probably my problem. My number one problem is I talk too much. But I just love to talk, and I love working with students. So for me, it's not a problem at all. But I can imagine if somebody was more of an introvert, they might have issues with it virtual because you do need to engage with your students virtually.
Mm-hmm.
We still engage. We have live classes every single day. So it's not, this is our program is not asynchronous at all. It's synchronous. We have live classes. So,
Okay.
and I love that. That's my favorite part. I love engaging with my students.
No, 100%. I can see how that would make a world of a difference if, they know who's teaching them on a personal level, right? As
Yeah.
well as,
Building those relationships.
yeah,
We're talking about technology today, but the fact is, and this is important, is relationships have become so, so important. With all the technology we have, the relationships that we build with students, to me, is the most important part of it all. Because that's really what matters. And it's so important. I think it's more important than ever. Our
yeah,
students are exposed. I mean, these are digital natives. Our students are digital natives, Gen Alpha. And this is what I'm teaching right now is Gen Alpha. And so these digital natives, they have been exposed to technology since birth. They're not impressed by the technology. They need to have the relationship with their teacher. That's why I'm not worried that AI is going to come and take our positions away. I'm not worried about that at all. AI is definitely going to disrupt education in a lot of
yes,
levels, but
yes.
students, I think more than ever, they really, really enjoy and they are looking for building those relationships with their teachers, coaches, instructors, whoever they may be. So I think that's so important to put that out there that relationships have become so, so important with all this technology.
I completely, completely agree. And, alongside building that relationship with your students, even though you are virtual, I wanted to also kind of understand how would you evaluate um, the effectiveness of your teaching online, and what metrics might you use to measure student success?
Ah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Well, we have very powerful. That's one of the reasons, I was very drawn to this switch, to this transition with all of our technology, and it's all proprietary. So I can't really speak about details of it, but let me just say this is that we have very powerful. I'm very big on data analytics and analyzing the data. We do a lot of data analyzing, and we can, with the powerful, very powerful analytics platforms that we have, we're able to really get to look at, a very broad picture of our students, their activities, what they're doing online, how they're interacting. There's so many different metrics that we look at and so many different data points that we look at. And that's all powered by technology. So again, we're back to, technology. It's not the answer for everything, but it's going to give us insights. I'm a big believer that the more information we have to make decisions, to change, to improve our teaching practice, the better that we are. So I'm all about data, and I'm very big on data analytics and looking at data. And we do a lot of that in our school. So it's very big. It's a very big part of what we do.
Yeah, and I can imagine that using that data can help you not just evaluate the student's success, but also evaluate your own
Oh,
strategy,
yes. We
right?
use this as a reflective practice, to be reflective and to reflect on our practice and to reflect on what we're doing, to change it changes everything based on the data. We change our activities, we change our lessons, we change everything. And even in teachers in brick and mortar schools do that based on, when you teach a lesson, you see how it goes, you reflect, but it's very nice to have all of this data. It's just really amplifies what a teacher is doing.
Okay. Yeah, that I can totally see that. To expand on that a little bit, would you be able to share about perhaps a time you might have seen an improvement in student achievement, as a result of implementing a new tool or strategy based on
Yes,
the evaluation that
there's
you
one
did?
area that I do want to talk about that is so huge. I think one of the biggest groups of students that are benefiting from this technology are our English language learners. Because when I was teaching in middle school, for example, I was teaching coding, and I was very fortunate at the time. We were using code.org platform, and they had, even before we had AI translation, they had already translated their program into like 27 different languages, which was fantastic. Because I had a few students, I had every school has a few students. There are students that don't speak any English. It just happens. They just move here, they just arrived, and here they are in your classroom, and you need to make these adjustments. So that was a real benefit to have these very powerful platforms in different languages. Is really helpful for students who don't have the English acquisition that they need at the time. It helps to scaffold what they're doing and to give them access to the curriculum, give them access to learning right from day one without having them to learn basic English before they even get started. I think that's huge. I think that's just huge. And now we're seeing with generative AI how much more powerful this is going to be in the future. So I think that's one area, one big area that I think we're going to see a lot of gains. And I was just very fortunate that code.org had done all the work, and they had already translated it into 27 different languages.
That's really amazing. I can see that just because English may not be their first language, it doesn't mean they are not able to understand the concept that they're learning in any of the other subjects. So it's important to give them that access. Again, it's back to access to learning. And I actually just want to share a quick story here as well. I mentioned previously that I've taught math to students here in North America, and I did actually work with a few students where English was not their first language. And I was teaching them math word problems. It's amazing because it's not that they don't know the math; it's just that they didn't understand the word problem, what the word problem is asking for, because it's in
Right.
English. Now, if I explain it to them in a few different ways, they know how to solve it. But just reading it on its own didn't give them a full understanding of what they needed to do. It makes a world of a difference to have that translation that you were speaking about as well. To give the student the
Absolutely.
confidence that they know what they're doing as well, and that language doesn't necessarily need to be a barrier to their learning.
Right.
Yeah. I love that so much. And it's always great to hear about success stories, with how technology might be impacting student learning.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for sharing.
And also, there's one more case that's very, very big, and I think this is important to talk about, is with technology now, we're able to differentiate at a much bigger scale and much easier, faster than ever before. A lot of the LMS platforms that we use today give you the ability to send, differentiated lessons to separate students,
Yes.
individually. So that gives us a lot of more ability to differentiate, which I think is really important. We need to do that. We all do that. Every teacher does that. And in some cases, our students need that, especially if they're in a special ed program or they're special needs and they have some special situation where they need a differentiated lesson. It's easier to do it now than ever before. In the olden days, years ago, we had to make the separate copies and everything. It was crazy.
Hmm.
Color coded copies for those of you that taught years ago. It was just wild. But now with technology, we can do this with a push of a button. We can differentiate all day long, which is huge. I think that's a huge benefit of technology.
100%. There's so many students in the classroom, and it's so difficult for a teacher to be able to um, personalize learning for each of the students. And everyone does have a different learning curve for any given topic, any given subject, any given time. And to keep track of all of that can be taxing for one teacher versus 30 students that they're teaching.
Yeah.
So,
And if you teach 6 classes a day, like I did, that's 180 students a day.
there
So
you go.
it really
Exactly.
adds up. And that's where technology, and that's why I really got on the technology bandwagon in the beginning, and that's what I wanted to mention a little bit is one of the benefits for technology on the flip side for teachers is, it's going to make our jobs a lot easier, faster. We're not there yet 100%, but with all of these new generative tools that we talked about, or
Hmm.
that we're talking about now all over the news and social media, this is going to make our jobs a lot. It's going to lighten our load in the long term. This is the most exciting time to be an educator, in my opinion. I'm so excited. All the
And
generative tools, you know, I'm just so excited because this is going to help teachers be more efficient, and also lighten their load so that we can focus on what really matters, which is our students. That's really what's at the core of all this, our relationship with our students and our families.
and I love your positive outlook towards this because there has been a lot of, you know, uh,
Yes,
yeah,
the
you
news and
mentioned
the
it.
media is going
Yeah,
crazy, but
you
I'm very excited.
exactly. You mentioned it earlier that, AI is not taking over our jobs. Relax. Um, but yeah, I mean, that said, you've had so much experience, whether it was brick or mortar and now in your virtual teaching as well, working with technology. And what advice might you have for educators who are new to virtual or hybrid teaching and are trying to navigate the use of technology in the classroom?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's very overwhelming. I remember when I first started out, it was very overwhelming then, and now I think it's more overwhelming because of the rapid pace of technology and how many tools. In the last month alone, just in the last month of March, last month, there was dozens and dozens of tools released, new tools, generative tools. It's everywhere. And so it can feel very overwhelming. My advice is just pick one. Just start with one. That's what I did. And just start with one thing. Pick one thing that you feel could benefit your classroom. And, don't do technology just to do technology. Pick something that you feel might be a real benefit for your students, for your classroom, and just focus on the one thing and just do that. That's what I did for a long time. And even to this day, I don't do, 25 tools at once. It's too much. It gets to be
Hmm.
too much after a while. But when I started, I just focused on one thing. And so you kind of just set your mind to it, focus on it, and just do that for a while. And that builds up the confidence level too. Once you get one thing under your belt, you feel more confident to try something different, something new.
I really like that. I like how you said, don't just use technology because it's
Yeah,
technology. Actually think through why and how this will help your students. And I think
right.
that's super, super important. And these are some great tips for new virtual or hybrid teachers.
Yeah.
That said, how do you collaborate with other teachers and educators to continue to share these type of best practices for using technology in the classroom?
Well, there's a couple different ways, but one is in your own school and in your own among your teammates, and I'm in all virtual right now, so we do everything virtually. We have virtual meetings, we collaborate virtually. But if you're in brick and mortar, you can talk to people in the hallway. That's always great. Talk to people in your school, but also social media. The way that I really learned, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you, most of the tools that I use and have used all in the past, I learned about through social media. I spend, not a lot of time, but I do try to keep up with what's going on and, follow different education groups. If you want to get involved in some groups on social media, pick whatever social media you like. There's not one is not better than the other. I spent over 10 years on Twitter. Now I'm primarily on LinkedIn. I was on both for a long time, but I had to consolidate my efforts. So I decided to consolidate on LinkedIn. But I have friends who are on Instagram. There's teachers everywhere. There's great teachers everywhere. There's great educators all over. They're on different platforms. So pick whatever social media outlets you like. I have friends who, they're on Pinterest a lot. It depends on what you're into, but just find the groups and find the educators that inspire you. And I follow a lot of them that inspire me, that are doing amazing things. And that's what inspires me. We all try to inspire each other, but there's some amazing educators out there, and you've got to find them. And most of them are on social media. I can't think of any that are not, but they're out there. Twitter is a good place to find them. They're also on LinkedIn. A lot of them are on LinkedIn, but most of them, I would say, are probably on Twitter.
This is great information, especially for teachers who didn't know this before. So I just want to mention that I can see how that would work. I also follow a few educators on my end. Using social media to share ideas and experiences, it's basically a great way to build a community of educators, because you can share these ideas that you have thought of in your classroom, and then if you share it on social media with others, they too will do the same, and it actually just helps everybody's workload in a way as well.
Yeah. And also you need to follow, it's very important if you want to get into technology, education technology specifically, you need to follow all of these companies, online, which I do follow them very closely. The ones that I'm very interested in, I follow very closely. And the new ones that are coming out, it's hard to keep up because there's so many, but I try to follow the ones that, have a lot of promise and that might be of interest in the future to use. Yeah. I do follow them too. So you do kind of need to have your pulse on what's going on in the education technology field a little bit if you want to really get into it.
Yeah, I can see that. And, this is a great point for me to speak to our listeners. And that if you're tuning in, we encourage you to share your experiences and ideas for using technology in the classroom on social media using the hashtag of MagicEducator Insights. Michele, I just want to say it was great to have you on our Educator Insights podcast today. Thank you so much. Yeah, for sharing your valuable insights. Yeah, we're excited.
I'm excited. I'm so excited about the future and everything that's happening in education technology and generative technology. We're seeing some big, amazing improvements already. I mean, Microsoft has already announced their Copilot. I mean, there's great things happening. So the future is bright. And I think this is going to really benefit both students and educators in the long term.
I can totally see that. Again, thank you. Thank you so much, Michele.
Thank you. It's been great talking to you.
Yes. Listeners, we value your feedback. Please take a moment to give us a review and share which EdTech topics you'd be interested to listen to next. Have a fantastic day ahead.